Welcome to the video, family. I hope you enjoy this one. It's a little bit longer, so treat it like a miniature podcast if you have to. Listen to it in your car while you do the dishes, while you do your cardio, but I hope you guys listen to the whole thing because it is jam-packed, loaded with so much information from my 10 years of competing in bodybuilding as well as studying nutrition. And all I would like in return for this is a thumbs up to help get this video circulating and shit. And please enjoy it. Also, a quick heads up, guys, every single thing on alphaclothing.co is 20% off right now using the code NWB18. That link's in the info box below. Please enjoy. So I like flexible dieting, aka if it fits your macros. And honestly, what's funny is every type of diet is technically flexible dieting. It is all if it fits your macros, even when you don't realize it. Like even the old school classic hardcore bodybuilders that stick to just the same 6 foods, chicken breast, broccoli, brown rice, sweet potatoes, etc., they're still technically using if it fits your macros. Calories are what dictates whether or not you lose or gain weight. There's a lot more to a healthy diet or healthy lifestyle than just calories, of course. But as far as the overall direction you're gonna go in body weight and body fat, that comes down to the amount of calories you're taking. Like we discussed in the last video, caloric surplus versus caloric deficit. You make up these calories with macronutrients. Macro meaning large, you need a large number of them. Macronutrients are protein, fats, and carbs, and actually, technically, alcohol is also a macronutrient, but we don't need that one. In fact, we don't actually need carbohydrates. The only 2 essential macronutrients are proteins and fats. You need protein, absolutely. If you don't have it, you'll die. You need fats, absolutely. Without it, you will not promote healthy hormones within your body. So you absolutely need those 2. Carbohydrates you can technically live without, but they definitely make life great. Then of course there's the micronutrients, micro meaning small, the nutrients we need in a smaller amount, your vitamins, your minerals, etc. The word flexible in this situation means that you just have some wiggle room to pick and choose what foods you want to make up those daily calories with. So even if you're doing an old school keto diet of just chicken breasts and extra virgin olive oil and some avocado and just your proteins and fats, and it's all like the same 5 clean foods, still flexible dieting. You're opting to fill up your calories with those specific 5 or 6 food groups. So flexible dieting is technically literally any diet, but for the sake of this video, we'll stick with the stigma of flexible dieting. The stigma is on the premise that those old school diets are fixed in their ways. So if you decide to go on one of those old school chicken breast diets, you cannot stray from them. Therefore, flexible dieting is when you make those clean, quality foods the backbone of your diet, but also slide in some fun foods throughout the day, but making sure that you weigh them out and they all fit inside your macros, inside your calorie limit for the day. So it's not the stigma of your entire diet is Pop-Tarts and cookies. Most of it's still gonna be high quality meats, vegetables, the healthy quality nutritional stuff, but you can also slide in maybe a fun Chipotle lunch, or you can slide in some pizza, or you can slide in some cookies for dessert and not have it throw off your weight loss. I love flexible dieting, the stigma of it. I love mixing all sorts of fun foods, a variety of foods in, and getting really lean off that. And I think that's a great, healthy way to diet if you're gonna diet, especially if you're just trying to like sharpen up for the beach season or something easy like that. However, when it comes to contest prep, a bodybuilding contest prep, whole different ball game. A bodybuilding cut is not the same thing as a beach cut at all. Losing the first 10 pounds is easy. The second you drop calories, you're gonna hold less water, you're gonna drop 10 pounds probably in a week, if not more. Losing the first 15 pounds, still fairly easy if you're heavy enough. I'm saying if you're starting this diet above 12% body fat, you're gonna find this pretty easy to drop weight. But once you get to like that 10 to 9% body fat range, things start changing. Your body wants to fight to hold on to every little bit of fat it has, because we hold fat for survival. Our body does not want to starve. It does not want to wither away. And if we don't have food coming in, it needs to rely on that stored fat as energy to keep us moving and to keep us alive. So our body will do everything it can, slow its metabolism down. It's gonna pump up ghrelin, which is the hormone that signals hunger in you. So you're literally feeling extra hungry when you're in a diet. And it's not just because you're eating less than you're used to, it's because your body's actually pumping out a hormone that's making you feel hungry. Because again, in the wild, it wants you to survive. So it's telling you, go eat, go find food. Leptin levels are what make you feel well fed and held over. Those go way down during a diet. So you have all this crazy hormonal change and metabolism change when you start getting really lean, and it becomes a fight, tooth and nail, to keep scraping off those last single digits of body fat. And every tiny, minute detail counts when you get into the far end of a bodybuilding prep. It's much different than your regular, just want to look good for the beach diet. When doing this prep, I don't like flexible dieting for 4 major reasons. The first is smaller meals. So when you're dieting, like we said, you're already gonna be really hungry for a number of reasons. Because of this, you wanna try to milk every single meal and stretch it out and make it as large volume-wise, as in how many bites are you taking to finish that meal. You wanna make it as large as possible. The best way to do this is by going to those cliche, clean food sources, because a lot of those food sources are not super calorically dense for their size. So you can usually eat a lot of them without taking in a whole lot of calories. It's a better bang for your buck size and portion wise. You know, the perfect example is the sugar-free packs of oatmeal. 2 sugar-free packs of the brown sugar oatmeal, I believe, is around 100 calories per pack, so 200 calories for a whole bowl of delicious oatmeal. Versus 2 spoonfuls of peanut butter, which is about the same thing calorically. Which one's gonna hold you over more? If you sit down with a huge bowl full of oatmeal that's this big, it's gonna take you a little while to eat that entire bowl. You're gonna be full afterward, you're gonna be satisfied. You're gonna feel like you had a nice sized meal. Versus 2 spoonfuls of peanut butter, which is about 190 calories. It's about the same amount of calories you just took in with literally 2 bites of peanut butter. And how well held over are you gonna feel after 2 scoops of peanut butter? So that's just 1 out of a billion examples of why I don't like the typical flexible dieting as far as implementing sugary foods and fun foods and dessert foods into my contest prep. Calories are already so damn low. Every calorie counts. You need to make those meals stretch, so higher volumes of food with lower calorie intake overall. So sugary sweet things like cookies. You know, another example is 4 Oreo cookies. That's roughly around 200 calories as well. So again, a big bowl of oatmeal will leave you feeling well fed and held over, whereas 4 Oreos is not. 4 Oreos is not even a snack. I mean, you can mouth that and be ready to go for more. On the flip side, those sugary foods are not only calorically dense by really small volumes, so you fill up all your calories quickly with only a few bites of them, they also lead to more cravings. So if you have high sugary things like Oreos, it's gonna cause you to crave more sugary things. So again, you're already starving in this diet just from being low on calories. But on top of that, you're gonna start triggering cravings for all the sugary sweets that you haven't been able to have. So if you do slide, that was a big reason why I didn't like sliding in fun things when I did my contest prep. I would get questions, why don't you do flexible dieting and implement some fun things? You say you miss food A, B, and C, incorporate those things, track them. Well, A, I'm gonna fill up all my calories really fast with them. I'm not gonna be well fed or held over from it. And B, I'm gonna get my cravings going and drive myself even crazier on top of being hungry. The second reason kind of ties into what we just said, is satiety. Okay, satiety is basically being held over. But satiety is an actual measurement that is applied to food. So being held over can come down to, of course, the quantity, like we just discussed. Higher quantities are gonna leave you more held over, higher volumes. But it can also come down to the specific food types. You can have a small quantity of 2 different foods, and one may leave you more held over than the other because it's more nutrient dense. Not calorie dense, nutrient dense, and offers better satiety. So foods with higher satiety, meaning they're gonna leave you well fed and held over longer, regardless of the portion size, are things like eggs, things like meat. A lot of the classic clean foods are very high in satiety, versus things that are low in satiety are basically any carb source. Carbs in general offer lower satiety as a whole. So that's why people, like personally, I liked doing low carbs, high fat, high protein when I diet. Not because I think carbs are evil, simply because I feel more well fed. Higher fat, higher protein foods tend to have better satiety. So I wasn't feeling quite as hungry. On my high carb days, I actually grew to dread them because I'd be on such low calories. So my portions had to be small, like we just discussed in part 1. But also, like we're saying in part 2, the carb source itself wouldn't offer great satiety. So I'd have like a moderate sized portion, not even a whole lot, of something that didn't even hold me over. So I'd be starving and usually craving more carbs later on in the day. So again, carbs are not evil, but they don't offer the same amount of satiety. The third reason is inconsistency. So this comes down to inconsistency as far as tracking and inconsistency as far as your physique's response to foods when you're in a contest prep. So the first part would be tracking. you want to make sure you weigh all your foods down to the gram, down to the ounce, down to the millimeter, depending on what food it is. When you track foods, it's very important. Don't just take the serving size by its word on the package. You know, for example, a lot of whey protein shakes will say one scoop is X amount of grams, you know, say it's 20 grams per scoop or whatever. And if you actually take a full evened out scoop and you put it on a scale, you'll often find it's like 30 grams or 40 grams. You'll often find it's more than what the serving size claims it is. And this is obviously an easy marketing tactic. You use it up way faster. You have to go back and buy more sooner. But sometimes it's just because when you're mass producing something, they're using basic generalized calculations to measure out what a serving size should be, and it's kind of rounding. So it's not always accurate. So when you do track something, don't go by exactly what it says on the package for the serving size. Actually weigh it out by the gram, by the ounce. Cut out whatever you need to make sure you hit the exact amount needed, so you're not going to go over your macros, so you're not going to go over your calories. But see, with the fun foods, even this becomes really tricky, because if you take a Reese's peanut butter cup, for example, that's a heavy combination of fat and carbs, peanut butter and chocolate. Fat is very calorically dense. It's 9 calories per gram compared to a carb, which is only 4 calories per gram. So if you take a little bit, say you break a Reese's cup in half or something like that, and you weigh it on the scale and you track it based on what, you know, whatever your tracker says that it should be or whatever the package says it should be, you don't actually know if you're getting slightly more peanut butter than you are chocolate in that bit, or if you're getting more chocolate than you are peanut butter in that bit. So it can become really tough to start tracking. And that's kind of a weak example, but you can see how this would play out into a bunch of different types of foods. If you're blending a lot of macros, you don't know in that little portion if you're getting a higher ratio of fat to carbs, more than it actually says. And if that's the case, you might actually be a little bit higher in your overall calories you're taking in with that meal than you realize. Now, if you're just doing a casual beach cut for summer, this is fine. The tiny little calorie discrepancy is not gonna make a huge difference for you at all. Don't stress about it. But again, I'm referring to contest prep when the nitty-gritty really matters. Every detail matters, and those tiny discrepancies will and do add up, especially when you're in the final 4 weeks of a prep. So that's the reason I don't like tracking the fun stuff. It becomes harder. It's always easier to track raw individual ingredients for consistency's sake. If you have chicken breast with whatever, a bunch of seasonings, oils, dressings, whatever, you can weigh the chicken breast by itself, you can pour the seasoning into a cup and weigh that by itself, etc. So you get an exact measurement. And as far as eating out, going out to eat is really, really inconsistent. I do not recommend going out to eat when you're on a contest prep. Again, a casual diet, absolutely, it's fine. And there are ways to try to minimize damage. You order basics like boneless, skinless chicken breast with a side of broccoli, ask for it plain. You should be good to go there. But again, with contest prep, when the details matter, you don't know what the actual size of that chicken breast is. They're not weighing it exactly for you. They're just taking a breast, cutting it how they see fit, eyeballing it, and sending it to you. And again, this doesn't matter normally, but contest prep, it does. You don't know if they're using a butter to cook with. You don't know if they're using an oil to cook something with. And as far as inconsistency for your physique goes, carbohydrates and sodium cause water retention. Now, water retention is not bad. Water retention is all temporary. Your body will even it back out. But the thing is, when you're getting into that nitty-gritty stage, the final 4 weeks or so of a contest prep, it's really important that you can see how your physique is looking. It's important to track your weight to know which way it's going overall, and to be able to see how your physique's looking. And this is where consistency really comes into play. So when I was doing my cut, I had a certain amount of days, I think it was like 5 days out of the week that were all low carbs. And my body responded a very specific way to that. It would dry way out, it'd flatten out, and I actually looked really good. And then I'd have my one high carb day, and I'd actually spill over a little bit because I came so overly sensitive to carbs from not being used to them. So the following day, after my high carb day, I'd actually look like shit. I'd be a little bit bigger as far as filling out a shirt goes, but I would look a lot less sharp. It looked like I stepped backwards progress-wise, but I was consistent, and I understood that this was how it worked. I knew on Sundays, the day after my high carb day, I was gonna be holding water. I would just look a little less sharp. I always knew by Tuesday, I'd be back to normal, and by Wednesday, we'd be able to really see the progress of the new week kicking in with new low weigh-ins coming on the scale moving forward. It was a nice, consistent pattern, so I knew what to expect on what days. If you are close to a show and you're low in body fat, where body fluctuations will show the most, and you're mixing it up, and each day you're following the same amount of calories and macros, but one day you filled it up with maybe a higher sodium, saltier, maybe you had like a croissant or something like that with some ham or something like that, something really salty and high in carbs. And the day before that, maybe you had a different source of carbs. Maybe it was more like oatmeal based. You're going to see a huge difference in your look. You're potentially going to see a lot of water retention. And it might freak you out if you're not ready for that. If you don't have a consistent pattern where you know this day is going to be higher water retention, you might look in the mirror and be like, oh shit. You might step on the scale, see yourself a little heavier from that water retention, and panic. And then you might cut your calories down too much too soon because you think you're gaining fat and you're not doing it right, when in reality, you just had a little bit of water retention, but you can't gauge that if you're eating something different every single day and causing a different response in your body every day. So as far as consistency goes, it's a lot easier to stay on a very regimented eating pattern so you know how your body is going to respond each and every day on what day. I also want to add that in general, your mind plays tricks on you when you get close to a show. I don't care how grounded you are. You're starving yourself. You're going nuts, looking at yourself and overanalyzing yourself in the mirror. You're feeling the pressure about having to get on stage. You're already going to start psyching yourself out and making bad decisions based on emotion because of that. That's why I always like hiring a coach. Even if you know what you're doing nutritionally, it's great to have someone else handling it for you who's not emotional about it, who's looking with an outside perspective and can make these calls based on logic and not emotion. But if you don't want to hire a coach, at the very least, it makes it way easier to avoid these mind games by following a strict, structured pattern that's consistent. And last but not least, it's extra mental work. Tracking is a lot of extra work, at least for me. When I want to eat, I want to eat. I really don't want to sit there and dig through my cupboards and look at the back of everything and track it in and weigh it out and track in how much I weighed out and keep doing this with every single ingredient until I finally pile it together as a meal and then I can eat. And then I go to eat my next meal and I'm like, oh shit, I did my math wrong. I thought I had X amount left. I only have this amount left. Damn, now I can only eat like 2 grapes and a piece of cheese. Like, that's not fun to be in. So personally, I think it's just a lot of extra work, and I don't enjoy that, especially when you're dieting. It gets really easy to start falling into the temptation again. So taking the time to do the math and track may not be a big deal normally, but when you're 4 weeks out and you've been starving and you're starting to play these tricks on you, maybe you weighed in really low and you look awesome and you're ahead of the curve by a couple of days and you're feeling great about it. You're starving right now, you're pulling out all these ingredients, you're tracking them, you're weighing them out, and you're like, man, I'm really hungry. I'd love to add a little bit more of this in there. Well, how much more calories would it be if I added this? Okay, that's not too bad. I can afford that. It'll cut down on my next meal, but I'll just add it in and sacrifice my next meal. Then the next meal comes, and you either stick to that plan and you regret it because you're starving, or maybe you're like, I'm ahead of the curve. I'll give myself a higher calorie day today. It's a refeed day. And you start straying off that way. It's temptation because you're giving yourself that power to fall into it. Versus if you have a set meal plan you have to follow, there's no temptation. You just have to clock in and eat that meal when it's time. So, these are my main 4 reasons why, as much as I love flexible dieting and I love adding in fun things to your diet, and highly recommend it, especially if you're doing a casual cut. This is why I don't like it for bodybuilding prep specifically. And of course, if you do like it, you've used it and had success, and you don't fall into any of these issues, then awesome. By all means, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, use away. But this is just a video giving you something to think about and consider for any of you who are planning on going into a prep with flexible dieting if it fits your macros. Hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up and see you in the next one.